Well, we begin in Ivory Coast, where the situation is tense and tenuous on Friday, as President-elect Alassane Ouattara has ordered a blockade surrounding the presidential compound of embattled incumbent President Laurent Gbagbo. A defiant Mr. Gbagbo, reportedly entrenched in a bunker, is still refusing to step down and relinquish power.
As a result of the bitter fighting between forces loyal to both men, a major humanitarian crisis is now gripping the country. United Nations officials say investigators have found more than 100 bodies in western Ivory Coast over the past 24 hours. VOA's correspondent Scott Stearns has more.
After days of fighting to drive Mr. Gbagbo from an underground bunker, Mr. Ouattara has decided to leave him there and get on with the business of running the country.
The
outgoing president, Mr. Laurent Gbagbo, has entrenched himself at the presidential residence in Cocody with heavy weapons and mercenaries. So a blockade has been established around the perimeter to secure the inhabitants of the district.
It's a reversal of sorts for the presidential rivals, as Mr. Gbagbo blockaded Mr. Ouattara in a resort hotel for months after election results were announced in December. Mr. Gbagbo says he was re-elected when the Constitutional Council annulled as fraudulent nearly 10% of ballots cast in their runoff vote. Electoral Commission results certified by the United Nations show Mr. Ouattara won. Mr. Ouattara says the violent standoff caused by Mr. Gbagbo's defiance has plunged the country into a humanitarian crisis that he's now working to resolve.
I have asked the European Union to lift sanctions on the ports of Abidjan and San Pedro and certain public entities that were imposed because of the illegitimate nature of the regime of Laurent Gbagbo.
Mr. Ouattara is asking the Minister of Mines and Energy to restart Abidjan's refinery and ensure a steady supply of fuel. He's calling on security forces previously loyal to Mr. Gbagbo to ensure the safety of commerce and the delivery of food to markets and medicines to health centers.
I have also asked the West African Central Bank to reopen the branches in Ivory Coast to ensure a resumption of operations in all banks so as to enable the payment of salaries and arrears in the shortest possible time.
As many as 1 million people have been displaced by this conflict. United Nations Emergency Relief Coordinator Valerie Amos says Ivorians have witnessed terrible violence.
People are immensely traumatized. They have witnessed terrible violence and many have been directly targeted. Women told me stories of witnessing their husbands being executed. Hundreds of children have been separated from their parents, and women and girls have allegedly been kidnapped.
Amos says the UN is working to improve conditions for Ivorian refugees at camps across the border in Liberia.
With more money, we can deliver more food, provide shelter, offer better medical treatment to those who are sick, and much more. And I'm concerned that when the rainy season starts, which is not too far away, getting the aid in is going to be even more difficult than it is now because there are serious logistical and transport problems.
Amos says the UN is investigating several mass grave sites in western provinces.
200 bodies in one site, other sites where there are clearly bodies, but we don't know how many. I was taken, for example, to a well, and there are bodies down that well. So I don't know what the final figures will turn out to be.
Amos says those responsible for that violence must be brought to justice.
However, the events of the last week are a wake-up call to the international community that if we are serious about preserving the hard-won peace and stability that have prevailed in West Africa in recent years, we must address what is happening now. There must be no impunity for the perpetrators of these terrible crimes.
Mr. Ouattara is calling on his forces to maintain discipline and is promising a full investigation of all human rights violations, saying there'll be no cover-up of any crimes and all those responsible will be punished. Scott Stearns, VOA News, Accra.